Good morning. My name is Jeff Sharp, and I'm Director of the School of Environment and Natural Resources. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you enjoyed the Leaf-doku exercise to start us off. Matthew and Trevor, our facilitators today, have some engaging strategies for hosting online programs, and that was just the opening. In my 7 years as director of the school, I've appreciated the importance of environmental education to the alums and community members who support our school. Environmental educators connect us to the outdoors through science, curriculum, problem solving, and frankly, fun. It is exciting to be joined in this program with educators from across Ohio who I hope, like us, are seeking to continuously learn, evolve, and adapt, just like our natural systems do. As we prepare for our autumn school year with significant time spent physically distanced, it is critical that we consider innovative ways to keep people connected to our natural environments, including for learners of all ages experiencing days or weeks either at home or someplace outside of the traditional classroom. I think more than ever, it's important for us to be thinking about how we can be creative in delivering programming and educational experiences. I really want to thank all of you and your creativity up to this point, even pre-COVID. As director of the School of Environment and Natural Resources, I get to sort of see so many wonderful students coming to Ohio State interested in pursuing a career in environmental sciences, environmental studies. And I think it's a great credit to many of our environmental educators out there who inspired them. Just in the last 5 years, we've seen a doubling in the number of new first years joining us. And this fall at Ohio State, we are anticipating welcoming over 120 new first year students who are going to be seeking to pursue a major in one of our environmental programs. Really, it's your great work that sort of like does this. And I was even reflecting recently that we've actually seen a doubling in the number of freshmen coming to Ohio State initially thinking about environmental sciences in the last 7 years, which is about how long the Environmental Professionals Network has been around. So cause and effect there, I'm not sure, but it's great to sort of like have both the EPN and you environmental educators here with us today. Before we start today's program, I want to thank Chris McGovern, an environmental remediation contractor, for their sponsorship today. Environmental remediation contractor is a force for nature. ERC was created to serve the environmental and civil contracting industries centered around solar and water quality. Their team has decades of experience offering the best in project estimating, field execution, and project management to allow for on-time and on-budget safe results. To learn more about the ERC's work, visit erccontractor.com. Let us now move into today's program. I'm very excited about this topic area, and we are fortunate that Nicole Jackson, EPN Program Coordinator, an environmental education specialist and alum of our school, reached out and connected us with Trevor and Matthew to develop today's program. She will provide additional introductory remarks. Over to you, Nicole.
Thank you, Jeff. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining in on this awesome program that we're about to start. I just wanted to just check in with everyone, but also this was something that is very important to me. I've been doing environmental education for some time, and I found out about Matthew and Trevor's work beginning of the year, right after the COVID-19 situation happened, and just hearing all of the awesome responses to their work and what they've been doing here in Ohio, and connecting people to resources and opportunities to engage and connect the instruction and facilitation of environmental education and outdoor experiential learning to what we're transitioning into because of COVID. So I reached out just by email because I was really excited. Last year, July of this time, we actually had a field trip, and that was an awesome experience just to be able to work with different groups, different networks around environmental education and experiential learning. And I did not foresee this at all, 100%, but the graphic that we created was a picture of a classroom of students looking at a screen, and who would have thought that that kind of foreshadowed what we would be, unfortunately, dealing with today. So I think, you know, although these things are very stressful and there's a lot of uncertainty still happening in terms of how we're moving forward with education, there's still very much opportunity to find ways to connect with educators, professionals, anyone who's really interested in trying to figure out a new, innovative, and different way to connect all these dots so we can continue educating each other and learning from one another. So I appreciate Matthew and Trevor for reaching back out to me to put this together in such short notice. And again, they've been doing amazing work. I love environmental education because of the networking that I get to do and all of the wonderful educators that I've gotten to meet over the years, and to see that enthusiasm and inspiration and hard work and dedication to get people involved in all these different ways, again, has been very inspiring for me. So I hope all of you have the chance to experience that today for this program. And without further ado, Matthew and Trevor.
Greetings, everybody. So glad that you're with us today. As Nicole said, this has been an absolute joy to get to connect with OSU EPN, as well as their team. And now with all of you looking at the list today, it's pretty amazing the breadth of where people are coming from. And there's some people that we know in there. So glad to see you in a screen. Real quickly, a quick introduction about myself. My name is Trevor Dunlap, and I am the executive director of an organization up in Mohican State Forest area called Nuhop. And Nuhop is a multifaceted organization that does a lot of work with kids and adults and all sorts of other humans. But the major factor of what we're known for, and particularly during COVID, is our work doing environmental education and outdoor education. On top of that work, we also do a lot of type of programmatic stuff for kids with special needs, and to us, they're just kids. So what we're really excited about today is getting to share some of the best practices that we've learned over the past 4 months, and hopefully connect with you and see if there's some more strategies that we can collectively do together to help out humanity during this time. Matthew.
Well, hello. My name is Matthew, and I see from all of your wonderful name placards who all of you are. I'm so excited to be a part of this this program today. What a fantastic organization, and we're just excited to share some of the things that we've learned throughout this entire process. When I'm not doing things with Trevor at Nuhop, my day job is the chair of the education department at the College of Wooster here in Wooster, Ohio, just a little bit south of Cleveland, for those of you who might not know where that is. And it's fantastic. So I work with students who primarily want to be 7th through 12th grade teachers. And then I also do some of the foundations coursework. So a lot of that work that I do on a daily basis was just a perfect tie-in for working with Trevor and his organization to kind of work through this particular transition. So very exciting. So happy to be here and talk with everybody. So we're going to jump into it. But first, Trevor, I'm going to go ahead and share that Leaf-doku again. And for those of you that were here when this was up, very, very simple activity in terms of, for those of you, I guess simple is all relative depending on how your brain thinks, right? So for some of you, this might have been easy. For others of you, your head might have absolutely exploded, which is okay. So we're going to put this back up here. We're interested to see it. So first things first, there were 4 different kinds of leaves there in the chat. Do you want to go ahead, if you have it, go ahead and throw in what the 4 different kinds of leaves were. Let's see how you did there. If we were able to at least get that far. I have complete faith in this group. Now I'm getting nervous. Okay.
I'll give you a hint. Oh, look at that. We've got some good answers coming.
Abby, very nice. Yes. Adam, thank you. Very good. All right, so we have people that are tracking in the right direction here. So as with regular Sudoku, you have to have all 4 of those leaves represented in a row. You have to have all 4 of those leaves represented also in a column. And you need to have all 4 of those leaves represented in the color block. So it's somewhat complicated and confusing, but we promise it's also pretty possible. Trevor, I think I want to point out, because Trevor was pretty excited when he made this. So we originally had it just being letters, A, B, C, D, but Trevor went the extra mile and made sure that it still was A, B, C, D, but it was using the names of different trees. So I want to make sure that Trevor's, extra creativity was pointed out there, because he was going the extra mile there. So rather than get the whole solution, one of the things that we encourage you to do at this point, this is just a fun, simple activity. If you have the ability and you want to go ahead and take a screenshot, you can go ahead and do that. The screenshot's a great way for you to kind of keep and hold on to this particular idea when we leave. But I will also, as soon as we go, I'm going to drop the PDF of this into the sidebar, into the chat, so that you can also have that as well. So, but with that, I'm going to turn things over to Trevor, and we're going to get things started.
Quickly, one of the things that we wanted to model right from the start is when we are in this digital space, the pedagogy behind how we do our work is still relevant. And so what we found in all of our programs is that when we start with something, kind of a hook, a way to get things moving, gives the opportunity for people to engage, so we're not just sitting in a screen looking at each other going like this. To model that continuously, we want to think about the best practices in worst case scenarios. So when all of this COVID thing started to happen, we were sitting here going, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? One of the things that's the foundation of the work that Matt and I are going to talk about today is the fact that good pedagogy can still continue even in a digital classroom. So we think about this space as our new forum, our new classroom to do the work that we get to do. So if we use that as the baseline for today, as we have our dialogue, you're going to see how we can have many different iterations of how we do our work. So just to start right off, like good practitioners would do, we would engage people instead of having talking heads talk at you the whole time. So our presentation today, our exercises today are going to be very interactive. There's going to be some talking, there's going to be some action. So to get into that action, what we're going to do is we're going to start today with an exercise that we call the endless list. What in this exercise that's going to happen is that we are going to give you a goal of creating the most entries based off of a category. So when we get into this session, when we get into the exercise and start moving forward with our new friends that we're going to meet in the screen, you're going to have two jobs when we break you into rooms. The jobs that you're going to have in these breakout rooms, number one is somebody that we call a scribe or a recorder. So somebody that's really good at taking notes. I know that Susan James is in this webinar with us today. She's really good at that job. Another thing is somebody that's a messenger. So if you've been in Zoom meetings, you know that when we break you into breakout rooms, you're going to see a little green screen up on the top up there. So when the green screen comes in, there's going to be messages that Nicole, the Pied Piper, she's going to be sending you some messages. And you want to look for those things because we're going to try to tell you what's happening during the exercise and when you need to come back and other things to consider. When you make the move, what's going to happen is we're going to send you out into rooms of about 5 to 6 people. You're not going to see us, but you will be able to get those messages in the green line up above. Look to see what number room you are in. That's going to be really, really relevant. All right. Are you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? What's going to be important is to know whether or not you're an odd or even. Again, we're going to be in small teams. When you get into those rooms, when we break you out into those breakout rooms, what we want you to do is we want you to turn on a video and a microphone. Now, you want to introduce yourself, who you are, and what you do. So when you get in that space, who are you and what do you do? You're going to assign those jobs and roles, and you're going to jump into the task. So what are those tasks? In the odd number breakout rooms, you are going to be the greens. In the even number breakout rooms, you're going to be the rounds. So for the odd number people, what I want you to do when we get into that room, I want you to come up with things that are green in nature. So things in nature that are green. In the last minute, you're going to select your most unique entry. For the people that are the evens, we're going to do the same thing. You're going to think about things in nature that are round, coming up with as many identifiers, as many things as possible in that time. And in the last minute, you're going to select your most unique entry. Anything I missed, Matthew?
No, we're excited for it. So this first stage, you're going to be coming back and working with these people again during this webinar. So we are looking at this very much as just kind of an introductory getting to know you activity. So the introduction piece that Trevor shared at the beginning is really important. We want you to know who who you're in a room with, but then jump in. Let your creative juices start pumping, and let's see how many greens and rounds we can get. I put, just as a reminder in the chat, if you are an odd number breakout room, you are going to be doing greens. If you are an even numbered breakout room, you are going to be working with round objects or circles.
All right, with that said, Nicole, if you don't mind, would you send people off into their breakout rooms?
All right, I will get that started. And you said about 4 to 5 people, correct?
Yes, that would be awesome.
Okay.
Everyone is flooding back in. This is fantastic.
It's always my favorite part when they pop back into the screen so we can actually see who we are talking to today.
You all look thoroughly creative, like you had a mind meld of epic proportions.
There,
Trevor,
trees.
you want to get them typing?
Yes, so my friends, when you come back in, what we would like to know is how you did. So what is your total number of entries? If you could put that into the chat bar, your total number of entries for your different categories. On top of that, in the chat bar, if you don't mind, put the most unique entry that you came up with. So as you're coming back into this room, the recorder can list for us in the chat bar the total number of entries you had per category, and then on top of that, the most unique entry that you came up with.
If you just put next to your total number, just put if you were round or green. That would help us.
And then can everybody just make sure they're on mute, aside from Trevor and Matthew, just so we don't have any
22
issues with
greens.
audio.
I see duckweed,
Love it.
and kiwi.
20 round, very nice.
43 entries.
43.
Moss on a sloth. Love it.
That is well done. It's going compound. I think that's fantastic. That is well done. I love it.
Chlorophyll.
45. Most unique chlorophyll. Sandy, I think your group is going to like what you're doing today. This will be very, very good. I promise. This should work out really well. I love it.
Praying mantis.
Oh, that's
Very
good.
fun.
I like that a lot. Sweet gum fruits, fantastic. Total, a cross section of a snake. It's kind
Who
of
are
like
you
a
people? I don't even
like
know.
a tree cookie, but weirder. I like that. I think that's very interesting. Very, very interesting. 9 green and parrots. I love it. That is absolutely fantastic.
We had lots of cross sections. We sliced everything up. Absolutely fun. Absolutely great.
That is cool. So I'm so excited about this. So things that Trevor talked about at the very beginning, when we were looking at what this meant for us in terms of this whole change to this digital world, the idea of staying true to what we know to be correct and making sure that we are utilizing quality pedagogy. And so this particular experience, being able to take a group of however many we are, I haven't even looked, over 70 people, and reduce that down to smaller working groups so that you can have that kind of personal interaction that is the hallmark for so many of our instructional environments. That's so important. So throughout this whole experience, we're going to be making sure that we're doing that, coming back to the best pedagogy. It's not just going to be about talking and staring at PowerPoint slides. It should be about human interaction and action-based pedagogy, out doing the work that you're hoping students are going to do and others that you're working with. So that's fantastic. So why are Trevor and I here today? Well, what happened was this whole idea of, in the space of a few days, the whole concept of a traditional educational experience was completely upended, and forced educators of all kinds to redefine the ways that we planned, the way that we delivered and engaged students all across the globe. Think about how amazing that is as a phenomenon, as educators. Like this was truly universal. We all had to make this shift. Whether you were a classroom teacher working in a nature center, whether you did community health, we all had to figure out how to change what it was we were tasked with doing. For those of us that relied on that experiential and immersive environmental components for our teaching and learning, this presented, again, an unprecedented challenge. One of the things that I was fascinated, that the initial idea of, nature will not be closed. But eventually what happened, nature closed. Like, we had to start shutting down parks, and we had to do all these things that, we thought we initially environmentally we were like, okay, we can stake our claim on this. We're going to go with this. This is our, we can hold on to this. And then even that started to change for us. And so nothing was secure. We had to be really quick and creative in how we were making this change. So for us, the question became, how do we hold true to the belief and ethic of environmentally motivated and immersive teaching in a time where truly overnight screens became the universal mediator for learning? And for those of us in the environmental world, that is a terrifying concept. This is all this Huxley stuff. We're like, what is going on? That is my new reality. That is not it. I hug trees. That's what helps us. That's what feeds my soul. So we had to make that change. We had to do that quickly. The one thing that Trevor and I are hoping to provide is just that, is hope. The transition that we had to make as an organization worked. So traditionally, the Nuhop organization serves about 4,000 some students throughout their entire year of environmental programming at their site. And in the span from March until June, the Nuhop organization served over 18,000 people through their at-home outdoor education programming. In addition to that, most of Nuhop's participation is regionally based. And what Nuhop found was they were serving people from over 50 countries doing this work. So it's when we, and not just coming and visiting. So in addition to that, the lessons that they provided, and I had put a link earlier in the webinar to the actual outdoor ed site that you can go and take a look at. They were having in excess of 60 and 70,000 lessons being completed. So the reach was huge, far beyond what Nuhop had done in the past. And it was reaching an entirely new programmatic group that Nuhop hadn't been able to access before. So it started to open up even new channels for what Nuhop was hoping to do as kind of the internal belief and ethic of their organization. So we're here, we're excited to share what we learned. That's really important, but we're also here to have fun. We want you to experience some of the things that we have been doing with people all across the globe and modeling some of those best practices in this really, really strange time. So we're going to use breakout rooms again. And this time, so your first session in your breakout room, you were focusing more on kind of the getting to know you aspect. Hello, how are you? This is where I'm from. Let's try and come up with something a bit crazy in terms of numbers of things that are green and round. This time, what we want you to do is we want you to start thinking more about the activities that you are going to be participating in during the webinar. So what's going to happen? We've got two particular activities that are going to happen. And if you were in the odd group, you're going to be doing the activity focused on green. And if you're in the even group, you're going to be the activity focused on circles. So let's talk about those two activities first. You have, you had a link that was sent to you that had the handout for today that has both of the activities on it, kind of in a front back 2-page readout. So let's talk about the first one, that it's not easy being green. So this is Sandy coming back to your chlorophyll. I don't know where you went. Your camera was on, but now I lost you. Coming back to that whole thing about chlorophyll. This for us, this is a time-tested activity that has its origins all the way back in the 1970s. This came from Steve Van Meter's acclimatization work. And it's an interesting thing because this is really kind of, Trevor and I have a lot of points of connection just back through our histories. And Trevor's father started the Nuhop organization based predominantly on a lot of Steve Van Meter's acclimatization work. And this, it's not easy being green. This Shades of Green activity is truly one of my first memories as a kid in this environmental world. This was something that my father, Dr. Herb Broda, his life's passion is getting people to go outside and use the outdoors as an instructional tool with young people. And I just remember my job toting the boxes back and forth from the back of our minivan as he would teach all of these teachers at the Wilderness Center, all of these awesome activities where you were on your knees and scrunching things and doing smush art and all. It was the time of my life as a young person. And so this being able to come back and utilize this same kind of activity in a digital world was awesome. And I distinctly remember sharing this with him when we first came out with this digital version of it, and him seeing that transition come to life and just the excitement that he had for that. And so the second activity that we're going to take part in is also this a fantastic, and you have the organizer here. We call it Circles Are Pointless. And if you go to the Nuhop site where the actual activity is, and there's a quiz at the very end, because we wanted to make sure there was some sort of assessment measure that was incorporated into the content that was there. Yes, my dad is Herb. Herb is the bomb. I thank you in chat. I could not agree more. So that's to be son of bomb is fantastic. So excited about that. But on the activity, the circles activity you're going to be doing, I don't know if many of you know Laura Grimm is an environmental educator out in the in Ohio as well. She's through Downton Local Schools, and this is actually her her matrix that she uses with her students. Absolutely fantastic. And I do remember doing this with my dad. My dad had these as well on these index cards that you would just, as a kid, walking around outside, he'd give you an index card. We'd run off into the woods, find something, and it was spectacular. So we're going to do some things that are similar to that today. But first, one of the things that we want to do is modeling the pedagogy. So you have your instructions, what you're going to be doing. But the first thing we want you to deal with as a group is content, because that's important. We want you to give you some sort of background. But Trevor and I are not interested in being the ones to sit here and teach you about the content. You're all environmental educators, so we want you to take on that task yourself. So what's going to happen is very soon, Nicole's going to put you back into the breakout rooms that you'd used before. So these are people that you still know, and you're still focusing on the same topic. So if you did the green list, you're going to focus on the green content. If you are the circles group, you're going to focus on the circles content. So with that, here is the order of what I would like you to do. So when you get into your group, take a minute and read first the content. And you can choose to do that however you like. If you like to read silently, perfectly fine. If you want someone to read that out loud, because I know sometimes for me, I hear things in a different way when someone reads it to me. That's perfectly fine as well. You decide. You're educators. Think about all the different modalities that are at play. Decide how you want to accomplish that. Go for it. Second thing that I want you to do is once you've read it, I want you to take a minute and reteach it. Notice I said reteach. That does not mean reread the content. I really want you to dig in and say, okay, so if that's what this content is, how would you reteach that to each other? So spend just a couple minutes going back through the content, saying things in your own words, adding aspects of who you are and what you know back into that content. That's this whole idea. We want people and young people to connect to their schema and see how this knowledge connects to what the things that they already understand and know. Fantastic. So you've read, you're going to reteach. The third thing I want you to do is I want you to develop some sort of mnemonic device that helps us to remember your content. So this could be perhaps an acronym, right? That gives us kind of the initials for something that maybe relates to a larger word that teaches us all about the world of things that are green. So that's going to take a little bit of creativity and problem solving on your end. But think about how these different activities are kind of scaffolded for how people think and organize ideas. So this is very intentional. Last but not least, we want to make sure that we are tapping also into the creative side of all this. So the last thing that your team is going to be asked to do is write a haiku that captures the essence of your content. Okay, so there's 4 things. And Nicole, when we get into breakout room, she's gonna send a message to your breakout room, those 4 reminders. So you remember, you're gonna read, reteach, develop a mnemonic device, and then write a haiku. Because this is such an advanced group, you are going to have 15 minutes to do this. We know you can. It's gonna force you to be task oriented. But I know it's possible. So Trevor, did I miss anything before we have Nicole push them back out?
You nailed it. Fantastic. Okay. Let's do it.
Awesome. So we're gonna send you the reminders, the 4 reminders of what you should be doing right away once you get into your breakout rooms. And then Nicole will also keep you task focused by giving you some minute-to-minute reminders in terms of how quickly you're going to be coming back. Nicole, look at this. Look at your chat. Look at how fast Nicole is on this. Right there in the chat, you have those things. That is fantastic. Awesome. Okay, so without further ado, Nicole is going to push you back out into your breakout rooms. We are so excited to see you when you come back and hear all of your amazing haikus. We wish you good luck. Don't forget, when you get to your breakout room, turn your camera on, turn your microphone on so that people can see and hear your amazing ideas. World's largest Brady Bunch here. This is fantastic. As you are coming in, if you could please, in the chat bar, post your mnemonic device that you created as a team focused on your content. That would be amazing. And then also, what we would love, if you have someone who could post your haiku, that would be spectacular. We would appreciate that. But
yeah,
as
put your number, your group number or team number.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. That's perfect. What would be spectacular is if there's someone from your group that is willing or interested in reading your haiku, if you wouldn't mind using your reactions and give us a thumbs up so that Nicole can see that you are willing to share your art with the world of EPN, that would be amazing. Awesome. Looks like we have Amy is thumbed up. We're good to go. Have any other thumbs up? That would be awesome. The haikus that are coming through are fantastic.
Okay, we had Kent.
Awesome. Amy and Kent.
What are we doing thumbs up for?
Whether you'd be willing to share out loud your haiku.
Okay, we got Kevin. Kevin
All right.
Harrison.
Nicole, I'm going to have you pick 2 of our thumbs uppers who share their haikus here. And when
Okay,
Nicole calls on you, if you would just be able to unmute yourself so that we can hear the amazingness that is your team's haiku.
All right, we'll start with Amy. Amy R.
Okay, my haiku was math and nature, cool. Fibonacci is all here. Go out and explore.
I love it.
Awesome.
I love it. That is spectacular. Coffee shop snaps. This is good stuff. Well done. Well done.
All right, I'll go with Kent Holleran.
Oh,
in there.
okay. Yes, I'm here. I apologize if you hear the jackhammer in the background.
Hey, that's all right. It's ambiance.
Oh, sure it is. I deal with it every damn day now. All right. Our haiku was nature in the round. Patterns and orders abound. One need only look.
Ooh.
I love that.
Like that. That was nice. That was nice. Nicole, we got to do one more. Did you get
One more. I'm going to go with
These have
Gia.
been so good.
Gia was another person. Hi, Gia. Oh, you're on mute.
There we go.
There you go. Awesome.
Leaves have stories. Light bounces back, not absorbed. Chlorophyll is great.
Love it.
Chlorophyll is great.
Chlorophyll is great.
Thank you, Gia.
Thank you.
So much t-shirt marketing material here. This is fantastic. Simple, understated, but oh so true. I love it. That is fantastic. You all did a wonderful job. Just if you haven't done so, take a second to scroll through the chat and see the devices that people have shared as well as their haikus. They are splendid, splendid. I'm sure we can all find some good use for this, especially in some of our upcoming programming as some good hooks and anticipatory set right there. So that is spectacular. Very, very cool. All right. So we are going to, I'm going to throw it over to Trevor, and he's going to get our first outdoor adventure group on their way and doing some things. And then we're going to deal with the other group that's not doing things here on Zoom. So Trevor, what do we got?
So now that you've spent a little bit of time getting to know the content and it's ready, you've got it dialed in, you've got that mnemonic, you've spent time with your peers in that breakout room, we're going to go outside. We're going to do what EE people do. We're going to actually engage in the natural world. Albeit, some natural worlds might be a patio, some might be a front lawn on a stoop. It might be your backyard, or if you're lucky enough to live in the country, your nature's a little bit different. But we're going to take advantage of what we have as a resource around us outside of our homes. We are going to start with the green team first. When the green team is working outside, we will take some time to talk through our process of development with the shapes people. The shapes people are going to stay here. The green people, you're going to go outside and play. So here are the instructions for the green team. Using your handout, your phone, your iPad, or what other portable device that you might have, you're going to pull up the shades of green gradient that you played with, those that are the green right here. Ours is black and white or grayscale, so hopefully yours is color. But you're going to use that. And since you're gifted environmental educators, we have assigned you the most advanced grid. This is what you get when you come to one of our sessions. You deserve it, all right? When we release you, you're going to have 10 minutes to find as many matches to the gradient as possible. You're going to use that gradient. You're going to go outside. You're going to try to find as many matches as possible. Now, for the LNT and us, the leave no trace policy, we are going to just pick little pieces off. We're not going to pick off the whole plant. So if you want to pick those things, pieces off those plants, you can take them. You don't need the whole leaf or the plant to match it to the gradient. When you are gone, we'll be chatting with the shapes folks. Don't worry, you won't miss anything. We'll have the same chat when the shapes people are outside playing, and it's their time for their hunt. Everybody understand? Anything I missed, Matthew?
No, when you come back, this is a great time if you want to take a picture of your surroundings where you're collecting all of your shades of green. When you come back in your chat function, you have the ability to upload a file. So if you want to upload one of those pictures, feel free to do it. Or if you want to upload the collection of green that you have found arrayed in your gradient, that would be awesome as well. So it's completely up to you. If you look in your chat, you'll notice at the bottom where you type everything in, there's a button that says file, and that will allow you to click, and then you can upload an image that you have taken to share. Not required, obviously, but if you'd like to share that kind of surroundings and information that you've been using to gather all this stuff, go for it. We'd love to see it.
So with that said, this is experiential. We want you to go outside and play. So greens, this is your time to move away from the screen, get outside, get some kinesthetic learning, move like Matthew. If you do, you're going to be sweaty, but you're going to go on outside and you're going to get to go play. And then the shapes people, stay with us. We're going to talk a little bit, unpack some of the information that we want to share with you. Greens, when you come back in, join the screen if you catch us at that tail end, and then we're gonna move on in the process. So
Greens, you don't have to turn your computer off. You don't have to leave the meeting or anything. We'll keep the home fires burning for you. You'll just be able to, when you come back, jump back on. We'll be good to go. So we'll see you soon.
Just make sure your screens, if you're leaving to go outside, that you're muted while you're gone, so don't have any of the weird background sounds.
So 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
11:17 is when you are coming back.
So
good
with those
question.
Folks that are remaining, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about how this thing came to be and how we engaged. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the who, what, and why of the at-home project that we created. So luckily enough for Nuhop, we had the privilege of working with Dr. Matthew Broda, who's in the screen with me. He happened to be on sabbatical. And over time, Nuhop and the College of Wooster have had a great collaboration as we think about teaching and learning and educational pedagogy. So we were lucky enough to have Matthew kind of embedded in our team when all of this COVID thing happened. The WHO also was an amazing staff. One of the things that we strive for at Nuhop, like most of our centers, is trying to find the right people to conduct the type of programming that we want to do, to engage learners in the out of doors. for me, I have two types of staff. I have the full-time team, which are the ones that keep the things rolling and getting the right people into place. And then I have my team of seasonal, I call them global vagabonds, the ones that are really passionate about trying to solve all the problems of the world and serve kids in different ways. So they come to me from all over the United States, sometimes other countries, to come work with the students that we have the privilege of working with. On top of that, we had another colleague of ours, one of my full-time team members was actually a videographer by degree, although he had some experiential learning background, so he's my programs manager. So that is the who, the people that conducted or created this project. Matthew's going to talk a little bit about the what.
Make sure I'm unmuted. Oh, yeah, good, I'm unmuted. So this idea came at us immediately, and I'm sure you all had that same experience as soon as the announcement came down, especially related to schools. As soon as that happened, where we saw that schools were going on their extended spring break, for those of us that work with young people or in those environmental groups, we knew things were going to change very quickly. So for us, the immediate organizing question became, how do we maintain our ethic as a residential outdoor education program in a time when two things? One, we have no students. So this is a residential program. And for those of you, even if you have day-based work, that was the same reality for you. You have no students. And in addition, when we start looking at the world that we're living in, not only is it that there's no students, but when you're trying to solve this problem, you also have to do it in a way that yourself as an organization is socially distant. So look at all of us right now. A year ago, you were all on site visiting a particular location, a program that was doing amazing things in an amazing part of Ohio. And this now is, in 1 year's time, our reality in terms of how we're having those same kinds of conversations. And that was initially, Trevor and I both likened it. We're just listening to all of the news start to unfold. It reminded us very similarly to the moments kind of as September 11th was trying to unfold, where you knew you were a part of something at that moment, that the world was going to be different for a while, for a long while. But it was also in such a scary way because you didn't know how. And so at that time, because I was on sabbatical and I was able to have an office down at Nuhop, Trevor and I were able to commute back and forth. And it was it truly started as a wild idea. And I think that the phrase that we had was, why not online outdoor education? Because that was something that truly, from the very beginning, when we saw this happening, our initial impulse was, this is who we are. There's no way we would do that. There's no way. And at that moment, as we were driving, it immediately occurred to us, well, why not? Let's unpack why we're having that reaction and try to determine whether or not it actually is possible, feasible, viable, and allows us to maintain who we are as an organization, staying the same, yet trying to be totally different at the exact same time. Trevor? Oh, Trevor's muted as well. Sorry.
So the question is why? Why would we make that jump? Well, in my situation, running an environmental education center, outdoor education center, part of getting kids to the property is not only that opportunity to serve, but it's the opportunity to make revenue. Just like anything else, even though we're a nonprofit, you still have to make revenue. So we lost all of our spring engagement, our visibility, and our revenue. School shut down. I had over 2,000 kids coming to me in the spring. Boom. What do? Well, you have to pivot. You have to make the choice to do something different. One of the things on the early side of this is, how do we keep our people employed and engaged? How can we create something Matthew talked about a little bit earlier in our session, is that concept of hope. how do we create hope in this time of something that we've never experienced, any of us, humanity, during this pandemic? We need people to feel like they're doing meaningful work. The kids that, I call them kids, they're college age folks, the folks that decided to work for us seasonally are ones that I said again, they're the ones that are like, yes, I have an insatiable want to serve kids in the outdoors. I want to engage people, teach them an environmental ethic. I want to teach them about themselves and nature and so on and so forth. That work is meaningful. When we decided to make that pivot, what we realized is that that work can still be meaningful, although we might be doing it differently. And so we try to connect that passion to the type of work that we had to pivot to in this digital space. And the cool thing for all of us that do this kind of work, and I've looked at the list of the folks that are in this webinar today, we hire people for a specific skill set. And so when we think about how do we change the way that we do things while at the same time providing the same kind of outcome, we need to leverage those skills. So what we focused on is how can we take those people and leverage that? And during that time, on the early side of the pandemic, teachers and parents needed content. We were in a stage of emergency teaching. We didn't know what we were doing. None of us in the realm of how we typically interface with people, but we had to create a space. So what we chose to do is we chose to push it out to our client base, but we thought, well, why not send it to more? So we sent it to the state of Ohio, and then it organically went from there. Instead of coming to a place where we were trying to monetize it, we wanted to become a solution-oriented facility to provide a space for people to have something they can engage with, to do what they want to do, which is to serve kids in an environmental or experiential type of situation. And for us, we wanted to stay relevant in the marketplace, because what you want to do is you want to create that value-added space, that place where, gosh, you know what? This stinks for all of us. Let's do this together, and let's provide a resource so kids can be served. And that is the why.
And Ebony in the chat asked a good question in terms of this idea about the digital divide, because that is so true. And this is, right now, that is the biggest struggle that all areas of education are experiencing. I know for ourselves at the College of Wooster, just one of the biggest, going back through our student data from when the pandemic hit, the students that were having the biggest issues were the students that had the worst connections. And that is, yes, becomes a prevailing trend. And so one of the things, we'll talk a bit more in terms of how we kind of design things too, Ebony. One of the things that in its design, we were trying to utilize a very simple and easy technology framework. There's a lot of different tools that are out there that could have done this same kind of work that we put together in a way that's probably a bit more glitzy, has probably a lot more kind of service built in. But all of those things we saw as being stumbling blocks for kids that were not provided with the best opportunity for access. So what we wanted was something that was going to be as simple as possible so that they could utilize things quickly with relatively poor connections to the internet. But we also wanted things to be packaged in a very simple way so that they were able to get to a hotspot or a location like at a library or any location where they could have accessed a signal. It's something that they could have grabbed and done quickly. So we'll talk a bit more in terms of that structure a little bit later on, Ebony, but that's a great question. It was a huge, huge consideration for us. Trevor, that's 10 minutes. I'm seeing green starting to pop back into our screen here. This is fantastic. I'm seeing some awesome images. Amy and Suzanne both post some fantastic images. Look at Suzanne, look at that array. That is fantastic. Very nice job. If you haven't done so, take a look at some of these, the images coming in. These are great. These are fantastic.
We have Gia working in the screen right there, showing us some of her work. Very, very great. I love the creativity there.
Oh my heavens, and someone even had deer. This is spectacular. Who is it? Was this Jackie? Oh my gosh. Well done. Oh, now that's a handful right there. Look at all, excellent job. That was Alexander. Very well done. Wonderful. Any of our green people, we would like to ask you a couple of questions about your green scavenger experience. So if you would be willing to chat with us, if you wouldn't mind giving us a thumbs up, that would be awesome. Just have a couple questions to ask you about your strategies. Thank you, Natalie. Natalie, would you be willing to unmute yourself so we could chat with you about your experience? How are you, Natalie?
I'm doing well, and I'm a College of Wooster graduate, so go Woo!
Yes. What year?
2008.
Awesome. An intrepid Scot. I love it. Scots.
So my little experience going outside. So I'm in my office, and I'm in an urban area. So I had to go down several flights of stairs to go outside and try to sneak around and pick tiny bits of leaves off of landscaping that was recently planted around our new building.
That's good.
So that is what I had to do. I tried to get leaves of lots of different colors, and I'm realizing that leaves in landscaping, they tend to pick things that fit into like two categories, like excessively blue or excessively yellow.
Yes.
So I don't actually have a wide variety of leaf color, which is pretty interesting.
That is really interesting. But you're so right. I mean, the whole idea of, at least currently, a lot of the landscaping work is where you're just turning the saturation up as high as you can, like on your pictures where you say no filter, but we all know there's a filter. Yeah, that is fascinating. I love it. Did you arouse any suspicion in your plucking?
I don't think so. It's pretty quiet out there right now. I don't know if people like working in the offices on the lower level of the building were like, what's that weird lady doing in that flower bed? But I kind of have that reputation around here anyway. So. Oh,
well, that's good. That's good. We didn't change anything. I love it. So any of the colors that you're most proud of that you were able to find on that gradient that you thought, oh man, I didn't think I'd be able to find this here. This is great.
I got this really, really, really almost blue, like a light blue green. So I think it's like the second one in, or let me see. So this one, kind of.
Well done.
Very, very tiny little piece of blue fescue.
Love it. Fantastic. Natalie, thank you so much. Wonderful, wonderful. And hopefully the rest of our green team, just looking at the images that are coming through from our greens, you all had very similar success rates, which was good. Hopefully we did not, just like Natalie, didn't make you suspicious in any way with your neighbors or your coworkers. But we're so proud of you. Well done, green team. So with that, Trevor, do you want to get our shapes people up and running?
So since you've already been onboarded in this process, we sent the green folks out. What we're going to do is we are going to send the shape people out and about as well. So let's just unpack those instructions one more time. What we're going to do, again, you're going to use that handout, your phone, your iPad, or other portable device, pull up the shades, the shapes in nature audit grid, which is, like Matthew said, really, really groovy. Since you are all gifted environmental educators, we're not going to play bingo. We're going to go and try and search for all of the shapes. That's right. We're not playing bingo. You're trying to get every single one of those things on that grid in 10 minutes. We think you can achieve the outcome. When we release you, once again, 10 minutes to find as many matches of the grid as possible. You are encouraged to take notes or photos of each of the shapes that you found. When you are gone, we're going to talk to the greens, what we just talked to you about, the shapes while they were out playing. But don't worry, you won't miss anything. You already heard it. So what we want to do is we want to send those shape people all out and about. It is 11:23. You will have till 11:33 to get that task done, and we'll go through the same process. Anything I missed, Matthew?
No, snap photos. The photos were awesome from our green team. So shapes people, they set a really high bar, but I know you can do it. You have this. And I will put in the chat 11:33 is your return time.
So with that said, goodbye shapes. The rest of you please remain. We're going to have a little chat about the stuff we just chatted with the other folks about. So bye-bye shapes.
Good luck. You can do it.
So for those of you that remain in here, what we want to do is we want to chat a little bit about the who, what, and why. Why is this type of information relevant, and how did this project come to be? And later on, we're going to talk a little bit more about what does the future hold. When we think about the who was involved in this project that we created, this digital environment, we had a wonderful opportunity. So we have this great synergy between two organizations, Nuhop, the institution of which I am the executive director of, as well as a collaboration with the College of Wooster. As you can see, having Matthew, his breadth of knowledge and education pedagogy and how we think about work with kids is really great. Matthew happened to be on sabbatical during this time of COVID, and so he was kind of embedded and had an office down at Nuhop. So he helped our team, the Who, think about, well, what can we do differently as we have this opportunity to pivot and create something new, yet the same. On top of that, I have a pretty amazing team of folks that are full-time professionals. I have 6 full-time members still with me on the team here at Nuhop. On top of that full-time team, we also have what we call our seasonal field instructors. These are what I call our global vagabonds, those wonderful young folks that are fresh into their careers, that want to solve all the problems of the world, and they come to it with this amazing passion and desire to really, really serve. So you have this great combination of humanity that are ready for the challenge that is ahead of them. Now, I was also lucky that last year I made a great employment decision, and I didn't realize how great it was until we hit a pandemic. I had a young man named Josh that is actually a video producer by trade. That is his degree. Now, on top of that, he actually worked camps throughout his whole growing up. So you put those two pieces together, we have a great formula. So that is the who of how this project came to be. Matthew's going to talk a little bit about the what.
So the what, we very quickly as an organization had to determine kind of what our organizing premise was and how we were going to do this. There was just no question to us. It was this idea of how do we maintain our ethic as a residential outdoor education program in a time where two things are occurring. One, we have absolutely no students. And as a residential program, that immediately in your mind would spell recipe for disaster. And for all of you, even if you don't have a residential program, but you're day-based, or the work that you're doing is where you're going out to work with people, that your reality was the same. So you have no client at that particular moment to try and serve and to outreach to. The second piece of this that became increasingly difficult as well is not only did you not have the students, but if you look at our current reality, looking at the screen you're currently staring at, the work that needs to be done has to now be done in a way where we are extremely socially distant from each other. And that changed the algorithm too, in terms of how we think about doing this work. Just think 1 year ago, this same program was on site. You were doing a site visit to an amazing place, seeing how that particular organization functioned, feeling kind of the ethic and the community that organization has developed. And 1 year, now here we are in this world where we are all sitting in our living rooms, our kitchens, our places of work, and we are trying to have a similar kind of conversation and experience. And it changes. It makes us rethink our problems in very pronounced ways. And then for us, it was the idea that where we tried to come up with kind of that shift that Trevor is talking about was, so because we both live in Wooster, we were able to commute back and forth to the organization, to Nuhop. And our initial reaction when all this happened was, we are in a lot of trouble because there's no way we're going to do online outdoor education. That became such I mean, I think the first time we even thought about it, we just laughed, like, oh, that is just silly. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And then it occurred to us in about 24 hours, why not? Why are we having that particular reaction? What is it about our program that we can try and encapsulate in an online world so that we can utilize kind of the same ethic and belief that we have, this whole idea of staying the same, this is who we are, but doing that in a way that is absolutely and totally different. So that was an exciting what for us to kind of coalesce around. Trevor's going to talk a little bit about kind of institutionally why this became such an important problem.
So as an institution, we are a 501c3, a nonprofit that, you know, is there to serve. Our mission statement says to provide a safe, nurturing, dynamic learning environment where people are empowered to succeed. So when we were thinking about that, we have a couple problems. Number one, just like any institution, you still need to make revenue. So we lost all of our spring revenue just like that, as fast as Governor DeWine could say, we're done. And so what do you have to do? You have two choices: bury your head in the sand, or you can pivot and figure out a new way of doing things. So we chose the option of pivoting. What we needed to do is we needed to keep our people employed and engaged, and had two choices there how we did that. We could give them tasks around the property, you know, spruce it up, whatever, or how can we engage them based off of what they know? We want to keep people connected to the feeling of doing meaningful work. That's what we're all here for. We are all here because we make a choice on a daily basis to serve our communities in the way that we do with the institutions we're a part of. So we wanted to connect that to the people that we wanted to keep employed and engaged. When we think about the engagement, the type of people that we get to employ, whether they're the full-time people and or the seasonal field instructors, they were hired for a specific skill set. And because they had that specific skill set, even though we might be doing it differently through screens, we could still leverage that if we could tie that to passion. And so they have a passion for educating youth in an outdoor environment. And so we wanted to connect those things together. On top of that, when we were on the early part of this pandemic, teachers and school districts and parents and nature centers, they needed content. So we had a choice. What do we do with that content? We can scale it up. We can put it out there. Do we just give it to our existing clients? Do we pitch it out to the state of Ohio? We did both. We shipped it out and off it went. The content was on its way and we gave it out for free. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to stay relevant in the marketplace because, you know, we want people to know that we exist and that we can help serve them. And so all of those things were part of the why. You're muted, Matthew.
One of the things, since you weren't here, one of the questions from the group that was, the Shapes group that was here listening from the first round, Ebony had asked a question about the issue of the digital divide and how you can think about kind of jumping that gap and helping in that way. And that's a huge question. And I know that's something for us, even looking at the College of Wooster and how we're trying to make plans moving forward. The students, based on our student surveys, that had the hardest time in that transition period were the ones that had connection issues. And the college, it's been very difficult for them because they're looking at trying to build, you know, they're purchasing a lot of new technologies for people to use in this new kind of teaching. But in that particular scenario, it doesn't matter how many things that you purchase if the student isn't able to access it or have a high enough speed to make that kind of learning meaningful, you're still going to have the same problem. And so when we looked at this, and we'll talk a little bit more about kind of the design process, we wanted to make sure that we were doing something in a way that was very accessible technology, the simplest we could possibly find. There's tons of different programs out there that do this same kind of teaching and learning work, but we wanted to make sure that we were finding something that was so simple and would utilize the least amount of resources for a student, that, you know, if they had an opportunity to grab a hotspot, if they were at the library or in a lot of the school districts that we had used, we're using the mobile buses so that students could pull up and grab content and use those in different locations around their city. So that was something that was really important to us. The whole idea in terms of utilizing internet access, one of the things that, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, Nuhop converted a number of these to at-home mail out programs. So the content is actually able to be repackaged and sent out to students so that they can have it and do it from their home. It comes in maybe a bit of a, coming through the mail, there's a bit of a lag for those kinds of things, but it at least provides an additional opportunity for the students to access that when technologically they might not have been able to do it. Okay.
Well, it looks like they're coming back, Matthew. I think
I'm starting to see some cool, I'm starting to see some really good. So take a look at some of these images coming through. Some really cool shapes images.
We even have a movie.
So there was a question in the chat looking at this in terms of, is there a student grade assigned at the end of the digital experience, pass, fail, letter grade, written or oral exam? So in terms of the content, the way it was designed and delivered out to the districts, any of the teachers could choose to use that content however they wished. Many of them would plug the content that you had access to there, the Nuhop link, into their own Google Classroom formulas. So there were, the quizzes that were built into the end of each lesson that the teachers actually would utilize some of that quiz data in their own quizzes that they would make for their students, which was awesome. This was not anything that was related to my students at the college. This was something that it was all it was teacher based in terms of the decisions that they were making. And then we had Abby asked a question, how did the mail-in programs get advertised without the internet and with libraries being closed? So one of the things that we relied on, so school districts spent a lot of time in the beginning of all of this trying to understand where the need gaps were within their own districts. And so those things were relied upon for the districts to know. So you can, communicate with us and then that content could be distributed out to either the district to push out themselves or for Nuhop. I mean, Nuhop, especially with their summer programming they're doing, Nuhop is sending that content just out to the students themselves. And so it was, we really had to rely on the districts knowing at that particular moment the students that had particular need. But also it was, Trevor would get individual communications from people being able to connect in. So one of the other questions too, looking at this issue of online fatigue, and that's the program itself is intentionally designed. The way we were trying to do things is very similar to what we're having you do here, where your time is split between the digital and the lived. And so we found that was a significant hallmark in terms of a lot of this type of programming, where students were not spending all their time in front of the screen, but actually out doing things. So, all right, so shapes, people coming back in from shapes, we'd love to hear if you are a shape person, if you wouldn't mind, if any one of you is willing to participate and give us kind of a rundown of your experience, give us a thumbs up. We would love to hear the pictures coming through. Fantastic. People are doing an amazing job. Very, very well done. The curly vine is one of my favorites that I've seen so far, which is absolutely wonderful. William, would you be willing to unmute yourself and give us an idea of how it went for you outside? William.
Okay, so
yes, thank you.
So first of all, Matthew, I've worked with your father for several years, and
yes.
Son of Bomb. I'm gonna remember that. Son of Bomb. Couldn't have been more aptly named. Okay, so the experience with going out, I'm here by myself. It was a nice break from the whole program, getting outside and away from the screen, and it was real easy to key in on circular things. A little hard to get back and get the picture downloaded because I took it on the camera and all that, but it was a great experience. And the challenges EE educators face today are just overwhelming. And the only thing I want to add is you know, we have this wonderful opportunity that people are outside more and more. I ran this morning, the bike paths and the parks are jammed people. How do we leverage that and EE and bring the value added all into the equation? I mean, we've got some real major positives here. Okay, I'm going to shut up.
Hey, William, can we ask which shape were you most proud of finding? Was there any one that stood out?
Well, I posted a sunflower, but actually,
well done.
Actually, the seeds on poke right now, they're not ripe, but they're small green circular seeds are great. I took a picture, but I didn't know how many people would recognize it. Okay.
That is awesome. Thank you so much, William. Wonderful. Well, now that we have you all back, we just want to go through a bit more of kind of the particulars of putting this program together and how that all worked. So first things first is just a really quick timeline. And this timeline is presented because we want to give you hope. This is something, when we look at how to put something like this together, this went together very, very fast. So that announcement came on Thursday, and by Friday of the next day, the governor said, on Thursday, schools are done. Friday, we actually at noon that day, because Trevor actually had a program on site when all of that was shut down, and they needed to go home early because their school actually closed. So we had early access to Trevor's staff. And so by that lunch, that Friday, we had rolled out to the team the idea of this online outdoor education. And what we were trying to do, we were trying to connect with the content that they already had. Nuhop was geared up and ready to teach outdoor ed for the next 5 months to 2,000 students. So why would we deviate from what we know works and what we know the students like? We just had to change the format, stay the same, yet we needed to be totally different in how we provided that experience to the students. So the teams, they were given their initial ideas in terms of what the groups that they were actually planning in. Trevor's staff at that point, I think we were working with about 6 staff that were actually going to be on site, the residential site for the next couple of months because of their contracts. So those 6 started putting their best ideas together in terms of how do you take the existing curriculum that's there and start plugging it into this new format. And one of the things that I apologize, I don't have in front of me now, but I'll download while Trevor's talking and try and get that uploaded for you in the chat. So the way we did this was we created 2 different templates. Again, my background's in teacher education, so I wanted to help them think about the way in which we share knowledge and have students come to an experience. And so we were very specific. And when you look at the outdoor education site that's there, you'll notice there is a template, there's a format that we very specifically wanted that team to use to go through so that there was a consistency, so that when the more and more people that started to use this, they started to see that pattern and knew what they were getting. It became a known quantity, which was important to us. Over that weekend, the students had, Trevor's staff had their planning time, and we actually started video production that Monday. So this is now just 3 days out from when we started it. The video production went into process, and Josh was finished shooting the little clips from all of the teachers by Wednesday afternoon. And Wednesday afternoon, Josh went into hiding and started to do all of his editing magic to get all of those little clips down. Now, the beautiful thing, when you look at the clips and things that Josh was providing, it's all very short and very small. That's intentional, especially if you have students that have low bandwidth and they have a hard time getting access. You need those clips to be very, very tiny, very quick bursts so that they're not trying to stream something that's really long. So we were very intentional in how we utilize those clips and leverage that screen time, if you will, when we were in front of the students. As Josh was doing the editing, I then pulled Trevor's staff back in and we gave them a crash course on how to use Google Sites. I had talked about before how we were very intentional in trying to use the most basic of technology, and Google Sites is probably the simplest, most basic web design program that's out there. And that was intentional. We knew that a lot of schools were using Google Classroom, so that was going to be a very easy thing for them to link to and to have a part of their curriculums. And so the the students transitioned from kind of the writing production phase to now turning those particular lessons into websites, so that it had the flow that we were asking and requiring each of those lessons to work with. And so that content, we were doing that simultaneously as Josh was editing. Friday morning was me going through doing quality check and then pasting all of the links for all of the videos into their assigned spots in each of the lessons. And by that Friday at 4:30, we made live 14 outdoor education lessons from the Nuhop curriculum for public consumption. And that timeline actually didn't seem crazy in the moment. When you read it now and you think, man, that's just, I'm not sure how that would be possible. It was. And it's something that, and the reason why it was we were looking at what we already did. What do we do well? And how do we do that thing that we do well just in a new environment? And so because we were willing to stay the same, it made this kind of new presentation so much easier. We weren't trying to redefine who Nuhop was. We knew who they were. We just needed to get that Nuhop experience to people in a new and different way. So I'm gonna turn it over to Trevor, who's gonna talk a little bit about kind of the site and how that all worked.
So real quickly, and then we'll do some of the Q&A at the end. I see some stuff popping in and we can address that at the end of this session here. But the where, it happened at Nuhop initially because we were still be able to be in a close proximity. The first week was in close proximity as production happened. As the ongoing development happened, we started to move from afar. So we had our video production team there. Then what we did is we pivoted and said, okay, now what we need you to do is we need you to use your iPhones. Here's how we situate yourselves. This is the kind of backdrop that we're looking for, this, that, and the other. So we changed some of the formula. And then those were uploaded into Google Docs on which Josh could edit. Because he said we started with 14 and I can't even remember how many lessons we have now. Matthew would probably tell you like 30,
close
40.
Close to 30, yeah. With 10 more that are in production, yeah. So we'll end up at 40.
We taught people how we changed and shot the videos and exchanged the videos. And then we started to do what we do now, which we've been doing today and modeling that. And because that's what we do, we meet virtually to plan lessons and we looked ahead. So Matthew's going to talk a little bit about the how.
So I'm going to put really quickly here in the chat 2 different documents that I promised for you. So one is going to be the online template, but then the other one is the Nuhop lesson guidelines. And I guess, well, I just sent that to Robert privately. Sorry, Robert, you got a sneak peek there, Robert. You got a sneak peek. So let me send online. This will now go hopefully to everyone. Okay, so if you want to take a look at one of those in a particular order, I would encourage you to first take a look at the guidelines tool as opposed to the lesson template. And the reason why is one of the things that we needed to do is we needed to make the document that we handed out to the staff a teaching tool itself. So we had spent some time with them already in the semester thinking about how they organize their lessons and what things should look like when they're actually out in the field. Just because you're out in the woods doesn't mean you throw away the whole idea of high quality pedagogy and structuring learning. So we were able to kind of throw back to that, those ideas and give them kind of this overview of what we were expecting in terms of how those lessons could play out. And so with them, the second page, when you kind of get to that, we also wanted to give them, using the kind of the wireframe of what their web page would look like, actually utilizing some of those icons and things, got them to a place where they could design. The second document then is just that lesson template. They all were shared on this on Google Docs. This is where they built out their lesson plans, if you will, for what it was they were trying to teach. And then the beauty of that is they were able then to really quickly copy and paste from that document into the actual web page, and they were able to kind of head on and make really quick gains in terms of getting that content up. So for all of this, when we look at how all of this came together, for number one, we were able to coalesce around this idea of a truly compelling reason. And I think that in any of our decision-making processes, that's to have that really gives us clarity, which is really important. And one of the things that, and Trevor has got to be credited with this, is helping to make sure that your organization has a deep commitment to who you are and what you believe. And that's something that he has really tasked himself with doing to make sure and to help people understand what Nuhop does and how we can do that in the best possible way. And building that within the culture is so important because once you have that, you then can build this willingness to become totally different. And that promotes this idea of ability to be adaptive and flexible. In all of this, we were also having to retrain ourselves in how we took feedback. And that feedback then had to continually inform our propensity to pivot. Because that's something, as teachers were saying, this looks great. Could you modify this? Could you add this new lesson? This outdoor ed curriculum became very much alive. The first 14 were all Nuhop. The next 24, 26 have been all from teachers asking for content, things that they would love to have for their own students. And then last, this idea of the talent and the technology can all be coachable, and don't see that right now as an obstacle when you're looking at trying to do this kind of work. If you think, well, we've never built something like that, or neither had we. And the resources are out there. You're going to make a ton of mistakes and you're going to fumble through it. But what's so cool is that this whole idea that Josh, who is our video production producer, he kept saying to everyone, this concept of perfection is the enemy of good. And this is something we know what we're trying to do. It's going to be flawed. There are going to be mistakes. But at this moment, we can do this. And we have to be okay that it's not perfect. And that's what we live by. So if this is what Nuhop did, what are Trevor and I trying to show you today? Well, what we're trying to talk about is these different levels of teaching and engagement. So obviously the most desired by all of us is this whole concept of being live. That's what we want to be. We want to be in front of kids. We want to be outside doing all of these amazing things. Without a doubt, when we can get back to that, run with it, embrace it with open arms and be the best you have ever been in that particular mode. We're so excited for that. But in the meantime, Trevor and I wanted you all to experience what we consider this concept of digital live. And in a moment such as this, where the people's dexterity with things like Zoom and other video conferencing platforms start to improve, this idea of being digital live, where you can facilitate and send people off to go do experiences and have them come back and talk and share those experiences, this digital live platform can be really exciting. And so that's something we want you to consider in terms of how do you keep that in your arsenal. But then the last but not least is this idea of self-service. And that's what we produced with the at-home curriculum. That was not something that needed any one of us to particularly mediate that learning process. It was designed based on a learning structure so that when students come and engage it, it leads them down that progression of thinking and learning and understanding. But it can be done at any time and in any place. And you're right, there are still some gaps in terms of how you can achieve that, especially in a digital divide. But the potential exists, and being able to take something like that and convert it even into a mail-in, mail-out experience is possible. So when we talk about hope, we want you to step away knowing that engagement is possible and it is desired. And that's something that was very exciting for all of us. We also want you all to know as environmental educators that what Trevor and I have done, we are not at all advocating this as a substitute for your traditional work. What we're trying to do is create an opportunity to keep our beliefs and our strategies in front of people. Because I think William is talking about this right now, this idea that if we can get people's attention, how can we keep that attention? And if we disappear and vanish from their existence, that's going to be very problematic when we try to restart. And so trying to keeping this moving forward. But as you try, we encourage in wild times, embrace wild ideas. and see what happens. Just see what happens. And in that, trying these wild things, keep Josh in the back of your head, where he keeps telling you that perfection is the enemy of good. Lead with the best intentions, and see what can come of it. Because it's from all of us at Nuhop, we didn't expect any of this to have the kind of success it did. But it's spectacular what we have learned, and it's spectacular to see what people have done by engaging in that experience. So with that, we will step aside and answer any questions you may have. Nicole, anything that we have missed?
So just a reminder, the resources you shared, those will go out again to everyone in an email, just so everybody has those that attended this program today. So don't fret if you weren't able to download things at this moment. Also, I downloaded all of the pictures from the activity, so
Yay!
Those are really fun. So hopefully we can include that in our wrap up of the recording of this program, because I would really love for others to see that part of the meeting. So I think, Joe, if you don't have anything else to add.
I did see someone asking for the link for the site again. So I did, Katrina, I put that in the chat bar again for you. That would be, if that's helpful. I also saw a question in terms of wondering how the students sent back to the teacher their answers to the quiz at the end. So one of the things that, so those quiz kind of served two different roles. So we wanted to have it just kind of as a general assessment for us at Nuhop at the end. But we did have specific teacher requests. And the way those quizzes were designed is the teacher could go and just make a copy of the quiz if they wanted it for themselves, to be able to enter into a grade book or as a participation grade. The teachers would copy that quiz, and in their Google Classroom or whatever they use, they would say, when you're done, go ahead and use this quiz at the end. And so they took and onboarded the quiz themselves into their own curriculum. They didn't necessarily have them complete the quiz on the Nuhop website. So it just gave them, and all of that stuff, we were giving them the ownership to take it and apply it and plug it into their curriculum however they needed.
Yeah.
Matthew,
And within Google Classrooms, you have to copy that document, and so it's editable for people or for the students.
Yeah. And I think what we're going to end up doing here shortly is we're going to kick it back over to Jeff, and then let him wrap up, and then Matthew and I will stick around for some Q&As if you want to dive a little bit deeper.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you all. Let's kick it over to Jeff.
So to wrap it all up, I just want to thank Trevor and Matt. This was a very informative program. I actually found it rather refreshing to have some different formats to this. I've gotten so sort of like stuck in this sort of like Zoom meeting where you're just sort of sitting in one place. Moving around was great. Using the breakout rooms was great. So I think it's wonderful to have had you model some of this. I'll just make it as a casual observation. The fact that both Matt and Trevor were standing also brought a different energy to this sort of like meeting. And so that's something I think that I'm going to have to sort of like mess around with, sort of seeing if I can get myself elevated here, because I think you can just bring a different energy to the table for that. So a lot of little subtle things here in addition to sort of like very explicit sort of things. And also I had my 13-year-old son join for a little bit here, and I can tell you that he is just totally bored. More time than he normally has been accustomed to, and it's wonderful to have you all sort of working to figure out how to make engaging curriculum, because I know it's going to make a big difference for our students this fall to have active learning exercises that actually engage them more than just them sitting in front of the screen, because good Lord, he's sitting in front of the screen enough the way it is with some of his other recreational activities. So what a wonderful program. So I just want to thank you again. As is our EPN tradition, we want to recognize you for with a certificate of appreciation. We offer this to at all of our events. I'll flash it up here for a moment. This has been, it's in an electronic form. Normally we give this in a frame, picture frame. So unfortunately, we're not able to be in the same room, but we appreciate your efforts today, Trevor and Matt. And we look forward to sort of like seeing the conversation continue here shortly. Additionally, I want to note to you what our schedule is coming up in the future. We have quite a bit planned through autumn 2020. These are certainly unprecedented times. Several weeks ago, our school and the EPN developed a survey that many of you received and perhaps participated in already. The purpose of the survey is to guide our programming into the future. We really appreciate the information we got back to you, and we're anticipating that we're probably going to be doing a lot more remote EPNs in the fall, despite the fact that we can have some modest sort of face-to-face. The prudent thing is probably to continue this. But if you do have some feedback on whether you'd be interested in doing some face-to-face, please consider taking the survey through Friday. It closes then. If you've not had a chance to share your feedback and still would like to help us chart our path forward, we'd love to hear from you, or send a message to Joe or Nicole and let them know that you would like to participate in the survey. Looking ahead at our next EPM webinar program scheduled for 10 a.m. on August 11th, we'll feature Kyle O'Keefe, Director of Innovation and Programs with the Solid Waste Authority of Central Ohio. This program will explore insights and industry knowledge about the conditions, trends, opportunities, and activities taking place that are impacting our region's waste stream, including shifts that occurred during the recent COVID-19 slowdown in residential and commercial trash, recycling, and food waste. I'm kind of looking forward to this one because it's amazing to think of all these cascade effects of when you sort of shut down one sector of the economy, how it affects waste in another. And so I think we're going to get a good sort of sense of like what's happening there and how the sort of commercial markets have changed in response to this. So it should be a very informative program. And even if you're not totally into this sort of like space, we always sort of like come away with tidbits that are useful in other contexts. Please stay tuned for registration details, which will be available soon at the epn.osu.edu. Thanks again for all who joined us today, and please stay safe and well connected. I want to give a big shout out to Nicole Jackson, who championed this particular program. Nicole's brought a lot of value to the EPN in terms of coming up with great ideas and really helping challenge us to sort of like move in new directions. So great job, Nicole, in putting this together. And thank you, Joe Campbell, for sort of like coordinating this all too. Now, I appreciate the time to visit with you. I'm going to duck out, but we're going to turn it over to Matt and Trevor, who will remain on the Zoom meeting here until 12:30 to answer any continuing questions. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
So with that said, I see there's a lot of questions in there, and I'm not sure how we want to tackle those. And now that we have only 40 some people on the screen, you know, that gives us a little bit more flexibility. So how do we want to tackle these?
Yeah, so I'm okay with the hand raising situation again. I know we have some things in the chat that we didn't necessarily go over. So whichever one you want to start with, we can do chat, switch over to video, audio.
I took down a bunch of the chat ones, Trevor. Do you want me to jump on those?
Let's jump on them. Let's do it.
Yeah. So the first, I saw there was a tech question that had in terms of the video software that was used. That was one of the things too, that because of Josh's background, he had the potential to utilize something that was extremely sophisticated, but we actually asked him not to, because that, again, this was something that we wanted to make sure that whatever the process was, because we did not know what was going to happen. This was in the first week of this crazy pandemic thing. So we wanted him to be using something that we all could be able to utilize and access on our machine. So he just used the iMovie to be able to do all of that on his machine. So he has a Mac. But we also made sure that I think it's the Windows Media Movie Maker or whatever, there's a free version there as well, that we weren't using crazy sophisticated technologies, because that wasn't going to work. At some point, what if Josh couldn't be editing those things? And so we needed to be able to step into that same role. So everything we were trying to select was kind of baseline, most basic. So that was really important for us to make sure that was happening. I also saw there was a question about in terms of engaging high school students, and if we learned things about how to engage students at different levels. So that's a really good question. So Nuhop's curriculum is very much focused on middle school, and so that 4-9 range. And I will say that there was not a lot of participation in that 9th grade range, but from that 4-8, there was a ton of participation. But in terms of how we, looking at that from how we might think about engaging different age levels of students, one of the things that we've talked about is the idea of how do you tier those particular lessons in a way so that students can have and bring the technology with them. So one of the things we might shift is for a high school student, It might actually be just something that it's a handout that they would take with them that is then coded with QR codes. So at various moments when they're outside, because, you know, assuming that maybe a high school student would be able to spend a bit more time outside by themselves doing some of these things, they wouldn't have to come back into a screen. So the page then, as they would go through, they could scan QR codes along with each step that would pull up then a video for them or embedded instructions into the QR code that would give them some of their next steps. So again, trying to create a bit more autonomy for some of those older students too, and not thinking about, we liked to have the younger students go out and then come back, go out and then come back, so that we were giving them kind of more check-in moments. Trevor, what am I missing?
Just one other thing. One of the things that Matthew and I had the privilege of connecting with people all over the world on this project, but we didn't meet this wonderful woman. Like, I want to be in her classroom. Her name is Kathy Law out of New York. And so
Amazing.
if you send me an email, I will connect you with Kathy, because she's doing some really, really great stuff with her students. And she did a webinar on that for that secondary level people. So I'll connect you with them. So just send me an email at trevor@nuhop.org, and I'll be able to connect you with Kathy. Other questions?
We also, Trevor, a couple different questions in terms of whether or not you had a lot of people that were required or contracted to come in the spring, whether they actually engaged the curriculum. And we actually had a ton of the take up on that was fantastic. It was absolutely spectacular.
And so when we think about that, it was really interesting. They dove deep, and a lot of our client base used that as a resource this spring. And we saw, like Matthew was saying before, we actually sent out in our information to those folks saying, what else do you need? What else do you want? So it kind of helped us come up with the ideas of how to create new lessons and where the content area, where the need was. And like Matthew said, currently we actually have one staff member that is taking those leads from our teachers that we had from the spring, teachers that we knew, and a lot of teachers we didn't know. So there's a lot of people through this space. I have no idea who they are, but they've requested things. We put it in our queue, and our good friend Morgan is developing a lot of this content right now for those folks. So that way, when fall happens, we have even more resources available to people. Another thing go ahead, Matthew.
Well, and to be able to kind of track that, because that's something that I don't remember who, maybe it was Abby that asked that question. So one of the things that we love about this program, the Google Sites program, is it automatically dovetails right into Google Analytics. And so you actually can get a zip code analysis of where your participants are coming from. And so it's amazing because you get this heat map of where your participation is. So if you know regionally where your clients are coming from, and if you're targeting them specifically with marketing, you can actually see how well that is being kind of taken up. So Trevor, knowing the districts that he serves, he's able to, target and then track to see how much participation now is then coming from that particular zip code. That kind of gives us a ballpark understanding of how many people are engaging and participating. So that's been really, really helpful. And then it blows your mind to see that it's all over the country and then all over the world. It's really, really cool.
There was a period of time our third biggest user was the country of Hungary. So I have Hungarian roots, so it kind of made me happy. On top of that, I think there was a question about accessibility digitally. Yeah. So does Nuhop feel like reaching out to students digitally is as accessible to students as in the in-person experience? Do I think it's as accessible? No. Are we making modifications to make it more accessible than we did in the past? Absolutely. So for example, right now we're doing a project we call Nuhop at Home for our summer program. And what we've done is we've really changed the model than what you saw here. It's a completely different program to really think about who is that end user and how do we change that space, whether it's the Zoom space, size of numbers in that space, what kind of activities, what type of engagement, what type of supports that they need throughout that experience. So is it as accessible? No, but when we think about accessibility, how do we change that model to make sure that we are trying to impact those kids the best that we possibly can? So that program actually at 2 o'clock, we'll have the second part of that session because we're doing the digital live as well as the take as well. So it's kind of a hybrid model where there's a lot of support networks in there.
And I think in anything that we do in this new space, being honest about what we think it can accomplish is really important. And I think I listened to I gave them this example earlier this morning when we were talking that our local superintendent was asked a question in a public forum about gifted education for the district. And they said, will we be offering gifted services? And he said, yes, we will. He said, is it a program that we will turn around and point to say that we're very, very proud of? He said, probably not, because of where we are and what we're trying to do. And so I think that even in this situation where we're being asked to do something we've never done, being honest about that with your client base in terms of what you're hoping to have accomplished. Don't promise the world, because we might not be able to deliver that. And so I think Trevor's point of that's the basis for their organization, is helping students with special needs. And no, he's right. It's not as good as if they were with us, but they're trying, and they're trying to make those small adjustments to get ever closer to that desired goal.
Another quick question that we had was from William. He said, what percentage of students who pre-register for the original outdoor programs will engage in your virtual programs this summer? They're two separate things. So the one was outdoor education, the other was our summer camp for kids with special needs. When we look at that, the engagement that we had from our client base for the outdoor education was boom. We probably had even more engagement, because what we did is we not only gave it to our 6th grade or 5th grade or 7th grade groups that were supposed to come for the experience, but they got pitched out to their whole district. So you would find that you could see when classes were being assigned in different districts, and you were like, oh my gosh, look at Brunswick today. Wow, off the hook. It's amazing how many kids. Wow, look what type of engagement. Or you could see it happening in Colorado or New York or California. You could see these little bubbles, these heat maps. What we're finding is one of the things that we pitched out to our client base is, let's find a little feasibility. So if you can't come to us in the fall, what we did is we originally pitched our springs to falls, and now those falls that were rescheduled for fall are now moving to doubles in the springs. Some of these people are saying, okay, yes, we want to do this. So we're doing a little bit of the Nuhop at home. We're also having some of the client base say, okay, we're not going to be able to engage kids in the spring. So what is the best outcome? So we're talking a little bit about digital live with them, using the Nuhop at home as the tool, with some stuff on the top and the bottom with the teacher support. So there's different models going on for all the client base that we're currently working with.
And then I saw William ask what percentage of the students was K4. And William, I'd say we're looking at probably about maybe a quarter of the students ended up being from those younger grades. And in those, some of the requests that were coming in was in terms of some of the structure and language that we were using in terms of how we built the site and those kinds of things. What was hard is that Nuhop's primary mission for their outdoor programming is middle school. And so that was really, targeting in terms of the language and structure for the lessons really hit that middle grade band. So we didn't do a tremendous amount of adapting for primary grades at that point. We didn't have the people to do that. And at that particular moment, it was such a popular resource that we were getting so many requests for content. We just didn't have the time to kind of shift our gaze lower. And that's something that Trevor's staff was not designed. They were not hired with a primary intention. And so that's a very specific skill set. And so again, we had to know what we were good at, and we had to know what skills we had in front of us. And so we did not want to try and stretch people to a point where we were asking them to be something they weren't, because it wouldn't work. So that's, if we had that skill set in the future, yes, we would totally kind of add that, but it's not there right now.
Matt.
Yes.
Christy had a question. I don't know if you saw this in the previous. She was asking if you had any issues with online fatigue.
Oh, yeah. So online fatigue, that's a really good question. We were trying to design all of these experiences with that idea of not being in front of your computer as much. And so that's why all of the lessons utilize this outdoor adventure experience, where you have a moment to get instructions and you work with some of the content that gives you the foundational knowledge for what you need. And that was to be short. But then you were given instructions and you turned your computer off and you went outside to do something. And so that was our attempt to try and battle the online fatigue part. We also think that having it be a self-service model helped in that online fatigue issue. Sometimes the idea of doing something synchronous is much more tiring because you're feeling like you have to be on and you have to be participating in a certain time. So allowing a student to consume the content and do the experience when they're ready, I think actually it might not fight online fatigue, but we're trying to do as much as we can to create something that doesn't add to that. It allows the student to kind of access as needed, as opposed to we're all meeting at 1 o'clock to do this thing.
And that's, I think that's key for the upper grades, so ninth grade and on, kind of that sense of ownership with what you're learning and kind of giving that time to digest everything, but also build on it.
So I see Nancy asked a question. So if you go through some of the lessons, I would say it ended up being 50% of the lessons, the teachers weren't involved in the instructions at all. They would, in their Google Classroom, they would paste a link to the It's Not Easy Being Green activity, and the teacher would say, hey, today for virtual outdoor ed, I want you to do the It's Not Easy Being Green activity. I look forward to talking with you in our class meeting about how it went. So no, the teachers weren't providing any additional instruction. Now that said, we had some really fun teachers that would actually video themselves doing the activities too, so that the students could actually see their teachers participating in all of these different activities. And then they would challenge them to, hey, send a link. They were using resources like Flipgrid and all those kinds of really fun things that are out there right now for kids to share with their teachers what they're doing, or just simple uploads they had to in their Google Classroom accounts as well. But they did not, the ones that we had talked to and the ones that we've been in contact with were not taking the lessons and recreating the video instructions. The videos, or each lesson is self-contained, so that a student should be able to do that without any additional prompting or coaching from their teachers.
It was really fun to see. My daughter's a 5th grader, going to be a 6th grader next year, and with her school district, they're like, she would come to me, Dad, one of our lessons is on my lesson for the day. And so she would come in and share with me what lesson was happening that was assigned, this, that, and the other. So that was really, really quite enjoyable. We do have another question there from Robert that says, do you ever teach students to research a topic assigned or self-determined by Googling and assessing what they learned by Googling properly? Not too broad of a Google topic. No, not for me, not right now.
That's not something, I mean, obviously for a different context and setting, yes, but that whole, we did not start adding some of those secondary objectives into this in terms of like how to be a good digital steward and all of those kinds of things, which would be some really fun kind of evolution of that library of resources. But that was not, we did not have any of that kind of technology teaching to go into that.
What other kind of questions do we have?
I think we have all the ones through the chat, I think. Anyone, I see there's still a number of people still in the room. If you have questions, feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand. Let us know. We'd love to help in any way possible.
You can join our screen even if you want to talk face to face.
I'll throw a question out there. Jeff mentioned he observed that you were both standing up and that brought an additional energy. Was that intentional? Do you intentionally teach standing up, or is that something random?
I cannot sit still. It's not possible. It's not possible. So yeah, standing desk. Standing desk is that's what it's got to be for me. And yes, in my own classroom, and so it's probably hardwired into me. I do that with my students so that we can model classroom management strategies throughout the lesson that we're teaching. And so being mobile as a teacher is important so that you can utilize proximity, so that you can answer questions privately for students, so that you can do all of those kinds of things. And so I guess because I'm in teaching mode, I would go crazy if I had to sit down during this particular moment, because that's just, I might need to come over and stand next to you, Joe, because you're being unruly at that particular moment. I'm not sure how I do it here, but I guess that's just hardwired right now into my system. So, yeah.
And so for me, I think I was one of those kids that was never labeled ADHD, but I probably am. So I've had a stand-up desk for years. And so particularly in instructing, this is very key. So, and I see Susan on our screen. Hello to you.
Susan.
Any other questions we have from some folks here?
Christy has a question.
Yeah, I saw, Christy, do you have any tips for teaching in the fall for higher education? I just had to do 2 professional development sessions talking about this for Wooster. And my advice has been very focused on the person. It's very human centered. And I'm encouraging my department we're most likely all going to be utilizing some sort of hybrid experience where we will have students in front of us face-to-face for a certain amount of time, and then they'll have their online learning. And I sent Trevor a mock-up for my course design, and I said, does this look familiar to you? And my course, I'm designing it to be the online learning components to look exactly like the Nuhop Outdoor Ed. So they're going to have small pieces of instruction for me. They're going to have ways to get content from a wide range of modalities. They're going to be asked to actually go out and apply whatever that concept is in a physical, action-oriented way. Then we're going to come back together and review and reflect. And so, yes, so that in terms of the outdoor ed structure, I'm trying to also live what I've been asking people to do. In the face-to-face environment, what I'm asking my department to do is use that moment to build community with content as kind of the secondary driver for being there. And so in those moments, especially for an institution like the College of Wooster, face-to-face is our bread and butter experience. And so when they're with us, I want to make sure that we are using that time to get to know each other and to organize our thinking as a learning community around the topic so that we can still utilize why, the whole intent and purpose on being there. I have also encouraged our department to, when we think of things from a hybrid perspective, to think less is more. And so I want, so typically our classes are 2 hours long. In this environment, I do not want us to be designing 2-hour-long classes. I would rather split my class and meet with each half for an hour, because students, especially in a socially distanced classroom, we're going to feel much more awkward. The typical strategies that we're all used to using, pull up a chair next to the person next to you, gather around this particular topic and have a conversation. If we're asking students in my institution, requiring students to stay 6 feet apart, I actually walked in and I saw the tape on the floors and I wanted to scream, but it's okay. We'll figure it out. We'll probably find some game to play. Like I immediately thought of like a giant room of Foursquare, like you played on the, outside when you were a kid. I'm like, all right, I'm going to get probably fired for breaking things this year. But I think that it's that idea of reducing your number and your time, because if you meet for a really long time, you're going to be compelled to share and do too much, and you're going to overextend the strategies that you actually have at your disposal. You're going to make those, they're going to go from novel to dreadful really fast, because you're going to have to over rely on those things. And those classes they're going to are all going to be the same. And so, the less time you can meet in that face-to-face, focusing that on the community and the connection orientation. The content is out here, and if you're the one facilitating that through a Nuhop style site, great, you'll be able to handle that. But really focusing on the people and the connections when they're in front of you. That's my strategy, and it might be terrible. I have no idea. That's that's what I'm going with. I'll tell you. I'll report back in September.
Thank you. My picture isn't showing up for some reason.
But I've been trying to think about ways, just as you were doing your presentation today, and the going outside and how that can be adapted to so many other kinds of educational settings, and how we need to be creative right now. And I feel like our choices that are being given to us are either online or in the classroom. And there's nothing in the middle of using
Right.
outdoor spaces or more creative ways of doing things online than just sitting for, like you said, 2 hours. I'm not able to sit at the computer anymore. And I was thinking about how I wasn't enthusiastic about preparing for class. How are the students going to be enthusiastic?
Right.
What can I do to bring some of that joy of learning back for myself as well? And how can I use other kinds of environments in this process besides just sitting at the computer and doing what I did in spring when I didn't have much time to prepare things through?
One of the things that we did, and it's a small thing, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. We went and we found that we were able to get folding camp chairs for $6. And so we bought 60 of them, and we made 12 Teach Anywhere tubs. So I got trash cans, and in a trash can is 12 folding chairs, clipboards, small dry erase whiteboards, and then sanitizer. And so just like you were saying, Christy, like at some point you need to go somewhere else. And so these tubs are for all the members of the department. If we're meeting just in groups that are a half, we hopefully shouldn't have more than 12 students. So you can just grab the trash can, take the tubs, and you know, our organizing principle is the campus is your classroom. So wherever you need to be, and Mother Nature might not approve on that particular day, but for the days that it's possible, you're right, get out, change. But when you talk to teachers about things that don't go well when you're outside, the biggest issues are seating. Nobody wants to sit on the ground, especially, if it's been dewy or damp or any of those things, things to write on and things to write with. And so what we're trying to do is solve all three of those problems in one trash can. So here's some adequate seating that's going to work. You're not going to get dirty. Here's something to write on with a clipboard and something to write with the dry erase marker, and then ways to clean it all up when we're done. So I don't know if that helps. We'll see again how that, right now, all of this is good in theory, but we'll see how it plays out in September.
Yeah, thank you.
So we have about 5 more minutes in the Q&A, and I wanted to answer a question for Cindy real quick. So basically the teachers gave the lessons out to the students, and then accountability from the students was during the Google Classroom time the next day. I would say that's a yes and. Some of the teachers, if they didn't have a Google Classroom, they actually, instead of our assessment, they assigned a different assessment. Or they asked, like we did today, as we modeled that, send us pictures of what you did, or if there was a worksheet, or if there was some sort of digital engagement, those things had to be uploaded and submitted. So, there was different structures across the board.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Robert.
Hey, I'm 80 years old. I graduated from Purdue in 1961 in conservation education.
Awesome.
Awesome.
I was a university professor in policy, but I applied what I learned in conservation. Why couldn't you have a course long, or like collecting insects or leaves, and you teach them how to mount them, and then they could report back periodically about, here's how I'm going, I need help. And it wouldn't be just going over 10 minutes. It would be more of a course long thing. I remember collecting insects when I was at Purdue. And also we sent mail out to get information. This was before computers. And I must have gotten a whole mess of stuff I sent to different organizations, and I got information on different topics. So that's just some ideas from
I absolutely love that idea. And actually, I'm going to be calling Morgan about that idea today. I think it's fantastic.
Well, that's, that could be a next evolution for that kind of curriculum.
I live in a retirement center here, and I'm looking at my window at I live in a ravine in Clintonville. It was formed by a glacier. We had 1,000 feet of ice above me. And I've identified 53 trees in 19 species. And I'll tell you, the willows and black maples, they interbreed. And I learned a heck of a lot by Googling. And I think particularly at the high school level, maybe at the lower level, you could assign topics. And I learned a lot by, I was trying to get different sizes of buds. And I finally said, what willows have 2-millimeter buds. So, I mean, you can learn by Googling. I really learned a lot here. I couldn't have done it by just the typical tree manuals I have.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Robert. And that's one of the things that when we look at the outdoor ed, the at-home site, the evolution of that, you know, these are singular lessons that teachers can pull together around a thematic idea. And the next evolution of that could be project-based experiences. Yeah. So like Robert was saying, you know, maybe it's something that this is kind of the organizing problem that you're working on, and these are the projects that you will undertake to solve that particular problem. And so it could be a much more longitudinal study as opposed to something that's currently kind of more of a discrete moments. Yeah, thank you, Robert.
This was great. And these EPN things have been on for 7 years, and I go to many of them. And Joe knows I usually ask sort of pointed questions, but I wasn't asking pointed questions. I was thanking you guys and giving you some good advice, and I appreciate the fact that you're going to maybe pick up on some of it.
Well, I think I might have picked up on some stuff from you as well, so it's a win-win.
It is. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to add in terms of, and this is something I've talked about with Ann Baird, with the Ohio Certified Volunteer Naturalist Program, and Matthew Schumar, who focuses on the birding chapter, is connecting with communities, low-income communities, youth of color who want to know more about nature and the outdoors, but reiterating, you're talking about place-based and project-based education and learning, is promoting more of the backyard nature and what you have in your backyards. I feel like a lot of youth that I've worked with in the past, specifically youth of color, don't have that initial connection or interest to nature and the outdoors where they live. And I feel like speaking to that in some way is definitely going to be helpful with this type of programming, and helping them like really kind of dig deeper and exploring what's in their backyard and what that means to them in their community to help better support their communities, make them healthier, and increase their learning opportunities.
Love it.
Do you have any more questions in the, I don't see any more in the chat.
If not, we thank you
all,
everyone.
This is really wonderful. And I'm so glad we had all of these wonderful participants. And I hope everybody enjoyed it.
And I'm going to get Matthew a t-shirt that says SOB. That's all I know.
Hey.
Thank you so much. It was fantastic.
Thank you, Betsy.
Thanks much. Thanks much.
So everyone that attended will be getting a follow-up survey within the next 24 hours. So again, give us your feedback. We'll also be sending out resources from this virtual event, and hopefully for the rest of the day you have some time to get out and continuing your exploration. It's a beautiful day. Hopefully you don't have any rain. But if so, that's still an opportunity to engage with nature. So I don't know if you have anything else to add, Joe, but this was wonderful.
Thank you so much. I know I'll be teaching this fall. I have pages of notes from our several conversations in today's meeting. Trevor and Matthew, thank you so much. And Nicole, wonderful topic, and thanks for facilitating and all of you being part of this. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
I was just sitting and eating my fake popcorn because it was a magical. All right, until next time, thank you, everyone.